You have to have zero expectations. Nobody's going to save you. You have to keep moving forward. Why you should pick a fight with yourself to scale your business. Hey, I'm Donnie Boivin, the CEO of Success Champions Networking, and my biggest purpose in life is to help as many people as I possible get to freedom through building a business. And I do this because nobody did it for me. I got to such a dark place building a business that it took me hitting absolute rock bottom, almost losing everything I have, having to cash in 401ks from me and my wife so we could save our farm to build the businesses to the level we currently are. So now I just teach everything that I have learned to help as many of you get to where you're trying to go through building your companies. And I know when it got so bad that I didn't want anybody to know how bad the business was, because I thought if anybody knew how bad it was, they would never do business with me. So I made myself an island. I don't want y'all to make yourselves islands. I want you guys to learn and be able to grow your businesses through the content and the things we put out, through our networking groups, through our conferences and our summits. So this is why we do everything. In this video, I'm going to walk you through why you really need to pick a fight with yourself and how it's ultimately going to help you scale your business. So the first thing you have to do to be able to do this properly is you got to see yourself as a champion first. You've got to see yourself as the person that will stand out front and defend you. To go back to the old days, kings used to and queens used to literally have these major wars about ready to happen. And the kings and the queens would say, you pick your best, I'll pick my best. We'll let them duke it out on the field, and whoever wins the war. That way you're not killing thousands. You're only one person of the two is dying. And so you picked your best of the best to go out there and pick this war. When I had that thought and theory, and I was actually watching the movie Troy when I had this thought and theory, but when I had this thought, it hit me like a ton of bricks that very rarely do people champion themselves. They never actually put themselves out there and say, let me show you what I can do. They are waiting for somebody else to show up and say, hey, go this direction. Hey, here's a pile of money, or whatever. They're waiting for somebody else to kind of give them something. And what I've come to understand and come to learn is nobody's ever going to come for you. Nobody's going to save you. Nobody is ever going to show up and say, here it is. Thanks for just existing in this world. So you've got to become your own champion. You've got to be able to see yourself, know yourself, and I'll teach you how to do that in this video, and understand why you do the things you do so that you can be a champion. Scaling your business is a lot of work. It's very hard to do. And if you're not a champion of you, it makes it even more difficult. Like if you don't like the person that's staring back at you in the mirror, you're going to have problems, and you got to get there. So the second thing that I had to do in picking a fight with myself is I had to understand my emotions. Like what made me happy? What made me mad? What pissed me off? What caused me to rage? What made me uncomfortable? What made me excited? Sun Tzu in the Art of War is the only way to win the war is to actually know the enemy. And truth is, you are your own enemy. You are probably your worst enemy you're ever going to stack up against. And most people don't take the time to know yourself. So I hate the phrase know yourself because I shouldn't say I hate it. I've come to understand it, so I don't hate it. But I hated it for freaking years. And the reason I hated it is because I didn't understand how to fucking do it. Everybody was saying, know yourself. You're supposed to know yourself. You have to be self-aware. Well, fuck, I had no clue how to actually do that. It was such a frustration for me. Until I got to a point where I got extremely pissed off over something. And immediately after I got pissed off, I asked myself, why am I so mad at this? And when I realized I wasn't really mad at the thing, I was mad at something completely different. This just happened to be the thing I exploded on. And so we do these things called stamp collecting. And I love this entire theory. I wish I knew who created it originally because I'd love to give them credit for it. But stamp collecting is this idea that we have a book of stamps. We are born, that book is completely empty, nothing on it. But every time something happens that we don't expect to happen, we collect a stamp and put it in a book. I want you to imagine or I'll give you a scenario. Let's say I come home, we'll flip scenarios that say that pretend that my wife is a stay-at-home wife, which she's not, but let's pretend. And let's say I had an expectation of when I would walk through the door at 7 o'clock at night that I thought dinner was going to be ready. That was my expectation. So I walk through the door. It's 7 o'clock. She runs up, gives me a hug and a kiss, and says, "Hey, dinner be ready in about 10 minutes. Cool. I go make a drink, sit on the couch. Life is good. Tuesday, I come home the next night, and my expectations, dinner is going to be ready at 7. I walk through the door. She goes, "Hey, it'll be about 30 minutes. Cool, no problem." I sit down, make a drink, maybe respond to some messages on social. Wednesday, I come home the third night, and she goes, "Hey, it'll be about 15 minutes. Dinner be ready." I make a drink. Thursday, same thing. Friday, same thing. Saturday, after a phenomenal night out drinking and dinners and the whole 9 yards, I'm walking through the house half awake and I step on one of her shoes, trip and fall, and bust my head. I then grab the shoe and start screaming at her of why the fuck does she always leave her shit everywhere in the house? Am I pissed off over the shoe? No, I'm not mad over the shoe. We had a great night. Shit, hopefully we left our clothes flying all the way through the damn house, right? And we made it to the bedroom wearing nothing, right? That's the ultimate goal. But the fact of the matter is, I wasn't pissed off over that shoe. I was mad over everything, the expectations not being met of coming home and dinner not being ready when I thought it was, because those were my expectations. So I collected stamps each time. She did not have dinner ready. I put a stamp in a book, stamp in a book, stamp in a book. And eventually that stamp book for that particular issue fills up and we act in an irrational manner. So when you understand your emotions and why you act the way you do, that's how you actually learn to know yourself, because you're spending time understanding what makes you tick and why you respond and react the way you respond and react. Okay. It's the most phenomenal thing that I've discovered for self discovery and understanding yourself. So start asking, why am I sad right now? Why am I angry? Where does that come from? What is causing this? And it's almost always a reaction to something that you're reacting to from the past. So think about the dinner's not being met. I wasn't mad over the shoe. I was mad over the expectations that I had, probably not communicated, right? Expectations, and was cashing in that stamp book at that time. Okay. The third thing you have to do is you have to have zero expectations, and then everything becomes a gift. So this one took me a while to really, really embrace and understand, but I found that more often than not, I would close deals that weren't closing. Like mentally, I was already cashing that paycheck of the deal closing, or I was spending money before it hit the bank type things. I would have these outcomes already in my head of things I expected to happen. And when they didn't happen, they would fucking derail everything. So I had to start getting to a point where I didn't have any expectations. Doesn't mean I didn't have any joys or anything like that. I didn't put expectations on anything, particularly outcomes. So when you don't put an expected outcome on something, then if you get it, it's awesome. So it's like going into every sales conversation and having no expectation whether they're going to say yes or no to you. And that yes should surprise you, which is a phenomenal way to look at things, because it takes the pressure off of the no. Because like, no's are going to happen, right? No's are the part of sales. Right? I'm not going to take this one down a full sales path, but you need to understand that people need you to be able to make a decision when you're talking about sales. Otherwise, they wouldn't need you. So they have to sit across from you so they can actually make a decision about what they're going to do, what they're going to purchase, what they're going to buy. But if you have any expectation of that conversation of what the outcome is going to be, you're going to lose, because if that expectation doesn't align with what you thought it was going to be, your emotions are going to come to the table and bad shit's going to happen. So you have to have zero expectations, don't tie yourself to an outcome, and let everything be a gift. And it just makes building and scaling your business so much more simple. Not easy, but simple, because you're constantly working towards the next best thing. All right, the next one, go break things, trying new things. So the best way I always say this is go break shit, trying new things, okay? So what I want you to understand is if your business gets stagnant and mundane, it will plateau. But hear me out. You have to do the boring stuff to scale the business. So all that boring shit of, business development, cold reach outs, looking at your bank accounts, the operational processes and systems, right? All that stuff you got to do. What I'm saying is if you're not innovating and having things fall apart and break, you're going to move backwards. Chaos is a beautiful thing most times, right? Because chaos creates process and systems. When you have to put out the fire, you begin to start thinking about how do we never let that fire happen again, okay? So, or how do we make it go bigger if we need to? So what you have to understand is you've got to be going and exploring new technologies, new processes, new ways of doing things, new ideas. Change is inevitable and a beautiful thing for your company. If things stay the same, then you won't be able to move the business forward. So you have to, like, we've created a champion's code in our company. It's literally go break shit, trying new things. And we had to put that in there because often we weren't testing and trying. We were staying locked into our same way of always doing things. So you have to be evolving the company, and the way you do that is you go try new things. The next thing I had to learn how to do was play the long game. Okay. I was telling everybody that I wasn't a transactional type person, but God, I was making it so every deal mattered. The revenue we had right now mattered tremendously, and I needed everything to hit. And here's the truth of the matter. If you don't play the long game, all you're going to do is short-term thinking. And that's all I did in the business was this short-term thinking. And I kept, constantly thinking, man, if we could only get to here, we could do this. Or man, if we only could do this, and we can do this, right? I was always thinking in the now versus how do we scale this? How do we look at this bigger? How do we do this 10 times bigger than we currently are? So you got to understand that what you're building, that it's got a lifespan most likely. Most businesses don't make it 70 to 100 years. So you've got to decide is how long do you want this thing to go? Like, I'm finally getting to the point that I like this idea of leaving a legacy behind. That if I can build this thing that it lives beyond me, that's a beautiful place to live. And so that's how I'm coming at this. That's how I'm looking at this, is from that perspective of what does this have to become? What do success champions have to become to live for the next 70 or 100 years? What's the baseline principles we got to have in place? What is the skill sets we have to acquire to be able to make that happen. That's a massive mental shift to start thinking, it's not how do we get to here, how do we last to here, right? So that's where my head's at right now, is what are the things that we need to accomplish and do so we can be around for the next 70, 100 years, right? So it's a phenomenal way to look at your business. And then the last one here that I promise you is one of the most important ones is you have to keep moving forward. Here's what I mean. Rocky Balboa says the most brilliant quote in the world. And he said, life's not about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can take a hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. I've always loved that quote. And I will have that tattooed somewhere for too long. But it's the idea that you can be the toughest boxer in the world. You can be the best brawler there is out there. But if you can't take a hit, you're never going to win this thing, right? Building a business is a bitch. Scaling a business is even harder. And I promise that if you can't take the hits, if you can't take the shit on the chin, this is why it's so important to understand who you are and understand your emotions and why you react in situations the way you do. That's why it's so important that you learn the skills that you need to build this to a monstrous business. Take out all expectations. Know things are going to break and freaking use that. Play this long game and keep moving forward. Understand that every time something breaks in your business, as long as you take complete ownership of it and understand whatever breaks is on you, and you keep taking that next step forward. And if you get to a place in your business where you're like, I don't know what to do next, do the next best thing. And it'll move you towards the direction you need to go. This is how we've scaled to here, guys. And a lot of this stuff is going to help us continue to scale where we want to go. This idea of legacy and playing the long game is a massive mental shift for me that I'm excited to keep deploying. So I hope you got some value out of this one. It was a lot of fun to put together and kind of wrap my head around how to put it and explain it for you guys. So I want you to, or if you guys got any value out of this one, please subscribe, leave a comment below, ask questions. I'd love to answer those questions. Is there anything I didn't clarify or state very well? If it makes sense, share it out with somebody else, because that's how we continue to grow and get our brand out there. So as always, seriously, love you, mean it. See you, bye.